So I'm here with Seth Showalter, the author of the book "Finally Free: A Surrender to Authenticity." How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm excellent. You're a licensed clinical social worker, and you've written this book. But I wanted to start at the beginning. Are you from Missouri originally?
Yeah, actually born and raised here in Missouri. Grew up in a small town in northwest Missouri, really bitty town, middle of nowhere. So yeah, born and raised.
Yeah, I mean, what was it like growing up in Missouri?
I lived out on a farm. I helped raise cattle and pigs and lived the country life. But living in Northwest Missouri didn't have much diversity. And for someone who is identifying as LGBTQ, that becomes a very difficult thing in the coming out process and identifying who you are as a person. So, growing up in Missouri has been an interesting experience, one that has had a lot of good, but it's also had some challenges.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with Missouri. I went to college in like Jacksonville, Illinois, and like Columbia is like it's like 4 hours away from there. So I know, in like areas like that, people can sometimes be like closed minded. When you were dealing with like you're coming to terms with your sexuality, were there ever any experiences where you thought man, the feelings that I'm having, wouldn't be accepted by the people around me?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. That was a really big thing that I dealt with, was difficulty around the acceptance of other people and also fear of coming out. Um, where I grew up, I mean, faith was a very, very strong thing. And as a result, anything that fell um, outside of that framework was not received with much acceptance.
Your book, Finally Free, it recounts your experience undergoing a residential Christian gay conversion therapy program. Uh, can you talk about what led up to you attending that program?
Well, I want to be clear on one aspect of that, in that this was actually a program that was a Christian. It was a residential Christian substance use program that also decided to provide conversion therapy. So they weren't solely dedicated on conversion therapy. They really were dedicated to substance use treatment, but were providing conversion therapy as part of that treatment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was that question? Because I missed that. I wanted to
What
clarify.
what led up to you attending that program?
Well, I felt called into the ministry at a really young age. And having been raised in Christianity, I was very strong in my belief system that believing gay was a sin and that by being gay, I would end up going to hell. And so for me, I was really motivated by the fact that I didn't want to go to hell and that I wanted to do the right thing and I wanted to live my life in a way that was honoring Christ. And the church was telling me that being who I was in fact doing the opposite. So, prior to going to this program, I did a lot of things. I got involved with a big church here, actually in Columbia. Through the University of Missouri, I got involved with Campus Crusade for Christ. I got involved with lots of Christian organizations and Christian people, who then helped me get involved in like discipleship groups, conferences on same sex attraction and trying to step out of that. I did a lot of those activities in trying to live the right way. However, in doing that, I found myself in a deeper and deeper depression and started to use drugs and alcohol as a way of coping with that experience, which is what eventually led me to a Christian drug and alcohol rehab facility that also specialized on conversion therapy.
The book includes a lot of your journal entries. What do you think it was that actually helped you find peace with your sexuality?
For me, a lot of it was time and really it came down to stepping outside of myself and doing the things that I was terrified to do, which was becoming publicly known for being who I was. And that was a really scary thing. For so long, I lived in the closet trying to be someone that I was not. And as I started to accept myself and be like, you know what, it doesn't really matter what other people think, and share those experiences with others, I found encouragement in doing that. And that was one of the biggest factors that led me to self acceptance, was the love and acceptance of other people.
Um, I think like I take away from the book, like, that the experience was lonely,
Yes.
like, can you describe like, that loneliness?
Yeah. So, like in the program itself, there was no connection in my identity or who I was as a person, and so I felt very lonely. And it's written all throughout the book. This loneliness, which also was happening when I was in the closet, but was really emphasized when I was in the program. And part of it was not having anywhere to turn and feeling like I didn't have anyone to trust. Part of this program was all about making you surrender everything about who you are as a person. And so, in doing that, there was no safety net. There was no, you're okay, but that you need to surrender and beg God for his mercy.
I'm a Christian as well, and like I go to church, and like, there's been times and stuff where I've attended church, different churches that I wasn't necessarily a member of, but
Mm-hmm.
I've seen like, some sermons and stuff where they've spoken about like, the sins of uh the LGBTQ lifestyle. And I considered it like, it seems like, this is on the verge of somewhat like hate speech. I feel like your book brings up the issue of like, false Christianity,
Yes.
Christianity that's rooted in judgment and shame. You know, um, could you kind of talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the whole purposes of my book. In fact, I drill it home in the epilogue because I found that there needs to be a change in the church community and in how people act and respond, because we need to be operating from a place of acceptance of other people. And, what did Christ preach? Uh, there's no greater love than this, like love for God and love for others as yourself. Like that was the entire purpose and mission of Christianity, and I feel like we've stepped away from that, or at least the church has stepped away from that. And politically, we're entering a really scary time. But we just have to like look and reevaluate what Christianity means, and is it about a church obligation with rules and dictates, or are we looking more at a relationship with Christ in which love is looked as paramount, and it doesn't matter who you are, but who you are as a person inside. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think like, that's really important. I see a lot of like judgmental, like, talk in the church, and like you bring up a very important topic about politically. We have a House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who in the past he actually partnered with an anti-gay conversion therapy group. What are your thoughts about things like that?
His wife provides conversion therapy.
Wow. I didn't
I
know
don't know.
that.
Yeah. Well, she it was on her website. Once this got found out, it immediately vanished off of her website. So uh, there's some controversy there. So yeah, the United States of America is entering a really scary time for the LGBTQIA plus community, and I've been seeing this and scared of this for a while. I've even talked about it with my friends like a year or two ago, and they all kind of laughed and they were like, "That's never going to happen. It's never going to happen." And I'm like, just wait. Let's see what actually happens here in the country. Because I think in 2023, we've seen over 500 laws passed against the LGBTQ community alone in the United States across the different 50 states. So we're seeing some major backlash, and it's a scary time. And Mike Johnson, I understand why he was chosen as the speaker, but given his religious ideals, it's kind of a scary thing. When we look at, oh, what are we calling it? What do they call it? Religious indoctrination on a political level. What do we call that? Christian nationalism. Yeah. So it's not, it's scary.
Yeah, and there's even like celebrities, Pro Football Hall of Famer and NBC Sports Analysis Tony Dungy. He's faced criticism for his history of like anti-LGBTQ statements.
Yep.
Like he's tweeted like anti-transgender conspiracy theories and things like that. Like, what are your thoughts about things like that?
Well, I mean, I think that people are starting to be found for who they really are. And what's scary is that it's being championed.
Wow.
Um,
How did your work as a licensed clinical social worker come into you play, like, writing the book?
well, so the book is interesting in that I had journals from the actual program that were over 300 pages long. Okay. So I had a lot of work ahead of me just in regards of raw data to work off of. And what I ended up doing is I ended up going through every single day of those journal entries and then writing out like what I thought looking back now as a therapist. And then when I did all of that throughout the entire book, I then cut all of the journal entries down into just minor excerpts based upon what I covered in the reflections. But looking at my work as a therapist, I think that one of the greatest things that I think my book can do is shed light on the impact of conversion therapy on the psyche of the individual. And I kind of break some of that down in the journal entries specifically, but then looking back at it in retrospect in the reflection.
I feel um, Christian fundamentalism, like, you see, like, where the word of God, like, sometimes can be used, like, to cause damage to people. What can be done, like, so Christianity can be better and actually live the word?
Ah, that's a good question. Uh, I, you know, I've stepped away from Christianity in a large part, and what I would say needs to happen is recognizing that it's not about us versus them. I think right now, more than any time in history, we're seeing us versus them being praised and really emphasized. And I think in order for us to really love God and love each other, we need to get rid of that entire paradigm. This isn't about me versus you, but let's talk about us and how God can help us, creating unity rather than division. And in doing that, I think that Christianity could see a major reformation because all they seem to care about right now are all the things that they disagree with, rather than seeing the good that is actually happening in this world.
Makes a lot of sense. You were talking about earlier, like growing up in a rural area. I wanted to know, like, do you feel like, that uh is that a unique challenge, and how so? Like, if you had grown up in a city, do you think like, it would have been a different experience?
I do. I do think it would have been a different experience just in the mere availability of activities to engage in on like in school, like clubs, organizations, things like that. Where I went to school in a rural community, you either were an athlete or you were kind of a nobody. And when we look at the LGBTQIA community, we possess lots of skills, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's athletics. And that isn't limited to the LGBTQIA community either. It's just rural communities are very, very hard on individuals who don't fit specific societal norms. And it makes it hard. And I think if I would have been raised and grown up in a school district or a bigger town, for example, I would have had the opportunity to meet more people like me, as well as being able to engage in things that I was actually interested in.
Definitely. What's your hope for the book, finally free? What are you hoping like, readers take out of it?
Well, the thing about it is I have pretty low expectations for the book. But what I do have is this a hope that people will take from this book experience that they can apply to their own lives. My hope is that people will be able to relate to my book on multiple issues, regardless of whether they're part of the LGBTQIA community or not. There are universal themes written throughout the entire book, is that it really covers my life and my perspective. And then I try to paint pictures and correlations to other people. So when we look at what is my hope is that it sheds light on the impact of the church and how that can lead to negative perspectives on individuals, as well as looking at the importance of acceptance of ourselves and other people, and then the
Definitely.
dangers of some facilities.
I definitely think like, one of the things would be like, anyone who like, is feeling unloved or that they're not
Yeah.
good enough, what would you tell your childhood self?
If I could go back,
Yeah, yeah.
um, you are real, you're authentic, and don't couch to other people's beliefs. You are loved exactly for who you are. Um, so that's what I would say to my younger self. But we can't go back. But if people are able to take that and run with that, I think it would be deeply helpful. And I hope that my message in my book comes clear.
What's next for you? You got any plans to release any more books in the future?
If I do write anything more, it's going to be on a clinical perspective. I'll be stepping out of the more personal stuff, more likely, and then start talking on clinical stuff. I've not started any projects yet. Lately, I've been launching a course for the book from a clinical perspective that actually guides people through the themes. And that's available on choiracademy.com. And that's available today. And there's a Facebook group that's associated with that. But I don't have any book plans at the moment, but
Yeah.
I might in the near future.
The reviews though, like, there's a lot of like really good reviews, like on Kirkus, that's how I found you. And then like on Amazon, like, people are saying like, that the book, they loved it because it was so raw. It was so honest. And how does it feel like, to write something and it be so well received?
It's been really good. It's been well received. I want to get to those 50 reviews on Amazon though. I'm really amping up for that. Were there I didn't know that there were Kirkus reviews. I might need to go check that out. But the thing about it is that there's been some negativity too, and so it's hard to really to I don't know. The negative reviews kind of dampen the positive reviews, but the positive reviews have been really, really encouraging. And there have been a lot, which has been really exciting. But I want to get to that number 50 on Amazon. So I'm still pushing.
Man, that's awesome. Um, one of the reviews like I read like online and it was like from your aunt, and
Yeah.
she was saying like, how like, it really gave her like, understanding of you as a person, and that she loved you. Like, did you feel like, that you couldn't talk to your family about like those issues?
Yes. Yeah. Um, and this was a really big eye-opening experience for my family. In fact, part of the reason I waited so long to publish this book was because I didn't want to offend my family,
Mhm.
because of things. And so my aunt who left that review is actually in the book. So she has, of course, some feelings. But hearing her reception of the book in such a positive way was really encouraging. And I really appreciated her taking the time to read it because I know that it wasn't easy to do, especially for her in her history.
Where can people follow you on social media?
Yeah. I'm available on Facebook. My name is Seth Showalter. I also have a TikTok account. That TikTok account is Seth underscore 2034. You also can find access to all of my social media accounts and information about me, as well as links to the book and the course at my website, which is sethshowalter.com.
Definitely. What would be your advice to, kids who are experiencing similar situations who might like happen to come across this interview?
Um, if if a kid were to come across this interview, one thing that I would just like to advocate for is find some people whom you can trust. If there's anything that I can really emphasize, having people that you can trust, that you can talk to, is incredibly important, because the world is hard, the world is difficult, but you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are loved exactly for who you are right now. And don't let anyone else tell you different.
Definitely. Seth Showalter, Finally Free, A Surrender to Authenticity, available on Amazon. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.